I think culture is a mixture of the things we talk about, the things we do. And so I think it starts with talking, but then it obviously has to be doing. If we're not doing the things we're talking about, it doesn't go very far.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. Successful leaders make building healthy culture a priority. Meet other leaders who are building a culture where people want to stay and know how to win together.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me my friend Matthew Kyle from Athens, Alabama. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you inviting me today.
Matthew and I always have a lot of fun together. We have similar interests and actually known Matthew since before I started the company, so more than 7 years. And I just appreciate him and his family. In fact, last summer, your family came through.
Yeah, we did.
Came through, made a big trip to Texas, and we got to show them the amazing sights in College Station, Texas. So we did some rock climbing, went to the Bush Library, did a few things together. So it was good.
Yeah, introduced us to some good Texas brisket. So, I was not a brisket fan before, but that brisket was fantastic. So
that's right. So, okay, here's the question. Should barbecue be sweet or sour? Barbecue sauce.
I'm not really a fan of sweet, so that's not really.
Oh man,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All
I mean,
right.
it's just the way we grew up here in Alabama. It's pulled, pork
I
barbecue
know.
is kind of the barbecue of choice. So
Right. So, okay. Well, I do enjoy both, but I have to say I'm a big fan of sweet barbecue sauce. So,
gotcha. Well,
and maybe
I'll
that
let
works
you do
better for
that.
beef, and then sour works better for pork. How about that?
Yeah, that could be the
Could be.
reasoning behind it. So
But we had a lot of fun. Got to hang out at the house and did some rock climbing, things like that. So,
yeah, good times.
well, one of the questions, Matthew, you know this is coming up. I like to ask just to kind of get to know you and your personality, your leadership style. It's that, what's your superpower, what's your kryptonite in leadership questions. So, what would be your leadership superpower if you were to ask your leaders?
Um, I'm not sure they would call it a superpower, but I think the thing that's good is that I just think, I put a lot of thoughts into things. And so usually going, is this logical? Does it make sense? Is it going to work? So I like to process through the whole thing. And so at the end, I think it gives uh, better answers. And hopefully we can go yes, no, it kind of helps develop a better process. So, um, but yeah, so I think that was what they would tell you, that I'm
So
a good thinker.
is that thinking like analyzing, working through all the details, kind of seeing all the way to the end of something? Is that the type of thinking you're doing?
Yeah, sometimes it's that, but sometimes it's just that moment, in the drive-through, that it's really just standing there. Um, Usually in the way is what they would tell me I'm doing. I'm in the way, but it's like I'm actually going, hey, the way we're doing this part of the process, does it make sense? And so just trying to analyze that. So sometimes it's just analyzing this piece of the puzzle or this part of it, and how does it make sense? And so, but sometimes it is going, okay, if we do this, how does it play out? Like if we make this change in our drive-through, is it sustainable? Can we grow from there? Can we scale that idea? So trying to think through, and sometimes you go, hey, that'll only get us so far, and it's not scalable to the next level. So yeah.
And so what would be a kryptonite in there? What works against you in leadership?
Probably sometimes it's just that. It's just that, like, I want you to explain it to me. Like, tell me the why. Tell me why it's going to work. And sometimes, and I feel like it's one of those things I'm working on. I'm getting better at, is because I want to fully understand it. It's like, hey, if we're making this trip to College Station, I've Googled the route. We know how we're going. We know where we're stopping, and so I want to know what's happening between here and there. And so I think sometimes that holds us back because I don't jump in as early as I should. So, but yeah, it's something I'm working on, and I feel like getting better at. So,
Well, I know one of your strategic goals for the trip to College Station was to hit every Buc-ee's on the way here. Did y'all?
We did not make every Buc-ee's, unfortunately, but we saw quite a few of them. So,
Okay.
but
All
now
right.
that we have our very own here in Athens, I don't have to stop and see them quite as often. So,
True, it is. Yeah, you got it right there in your backyard. So,
that's right. That's right. So,
well, Matthew, one of the fascinating things about you and your is kind of your family. So there's a backstory here. Some may know it, some may not, but you're not the only one in your family that's a in Chick-fil-A or a Chick-fil-A operator. So kind of how did your family get introduced to what's the story there, how your family got introduced to Chick-fil-A?
yeah. So as far as my family, I have three siblings that are also operators. My mom was an operator. She retired in 2020. And my brother-in-law works at uh, the home office, the support center. He does IT work there. So he's working right now a lot of cybersecurity. So that dark work. So to keep us all safe. So it actually all started with my older sister. So that's married to Dale at the home office. So she started working at Chick-fil-A in high school. Started working there because she got Sundays off. They worked with her schedule. She played sports and things. So it just was a good fit. And so I turned 16 looking for a job. I'd worked kind of a summer job on a farm for a couple of summers, and like it's great because you can work a bunch in the summer, but it's bad because it's just a seasonal job. So decided to go work with Amanda at Chick-fil-A for the same reasons. We got Sundays
Which
off.
Chick-fil-A was that, by the way? Where
It
was
was
it?
the Chick-fil-A and the Mall in Decatur. So
Okay.
I think at that time it was just called Decatur Mall. But yeah, so we worked and crazy enough, we worked for Dale's dad, Barry. So Barry Wesson hired me, and so a few years later, Dale, and Amanda ended up getting married, moving to Atlanta. Uh, but I guess I don't know. Barry left maybe about a year after I'd started working there. A new operator, Bob Moore, came in and worked for Bob for a couple years. And when I graduated in high school and went to college, Bob got a store in Huntsville, so he moved as well. And so in the meantime, interim operator comes in. He's there for a few months to kind of bridge that transition and looking for team members. And mom and dad have always been the kind who just everybody came to our house. I mean, even when we were kids, like the baseball games, the football games, the basketball game, like all that happened in the backyard. So I mean, there are times we'd come home and there'd be kids in our backyard, and I mean, we're not even there. And so, but they also just everybody was invited over. So as we got older into high school, our friends would come over, they'd eat. And so it was just, everybody was always welcome at mom and dad's table. I mean, I've got five siblings, so total of eight of us, but it was never unlikely to sit down and be 10, 11, 12 people eating dinner together. And so, I mean, we had friends who would ask us, go, hey, I mean, this is before cell phones, so you couldn't text, but they would ask, "Hey, what's your mom?" They'd come by the store and go, "Hey, what's your mom fixing for dinner?" I'm like, "I have no idea, man. I'm working, but like just go by the house and see or what." And so we had one friend, and he would do that. Like there were a couple of times where he went to the house and ate, and it's him, my mom and dad, my little brother, so all having dinner. So it was just one of those things. So this new interim operator comes in. My sister Heather invites him over to lunch on Sunday, and he'd went to church with him. And so the next day he's like, "Hey Heather, do you think your mom wants to come work?" And she's like, "Jason, my mom's not going to come work for you. She does not want to do this." And so and she's like, "But just call her and see what she says." And so he calls mom, and she said, "Well, I gotta be off to take my son to school, pick him up when he has stuff going on. I need to be off." And Jason's like, "Sure, whatever. I need people." And so mom really started because she liked Jason and thought he was such a nice guy. And so then she, as it happened, a new operator came a couple of months later. They decided to build a new store in Decatur, and that was Barry Keith. And mom said, "Hey, what do you think about me asking for this store?" He's like, "Well, I think you have as good a chance as anybody. Like, why don't you go ahead and do it? So she went from not working at Chick-fil-A to a year later being an operator. And so it's really cool. I mean, she'll tell you that's how God worked it out. He designed it. And for the longest time growing up, she wanted to have her own like shop, like a bakery or something like that. She always baked cakes, stuff like that. So at Christmas time, she'd sell lots and lots of coconut cakes were her specialty. But yeah, so it just kind of just neat thing to watch how God worked things out behind the scene for her. And so yeah, so I'd had the idea to become an operator. So mom became an operator. A couple of years later, I became an operator. A few years after that, my brother Heath, he had graduated college, was working a different job, decided that, hey, this is what he wants to do. Um, and so he started working with Chick-fil-A and became an operator. And then a couple of years after that, my sister Heather, she was the same way. She worked at Chick-fil-A through high school, but graduated college, taken another job, and decided, hey, I think I want to try Chick-fil-A. And so she came back to Chick-fil-A, and then Luke, he just, he kind of like me, he decided, when he graduated high school, that's what I want to do. So went to college, got a degree, and so yeah, so here we all are, three, four siblings total that are operators. So
Well, shout out to all those folks out there. Thanks for, yeah, what a beautiful history, and um, for you to kind of pave the way, and your sister too paved the way. So here you are in Athens, Alabama. You've got Free Standard there, and you've got this amazing team. We've enjoyed working with your team, by the way. Our Danette has worked with your team for quite a while, and they it's just an amazing thing to see their growth and how your organization has grown. So thanks for having us along on the journey.
yeah, we appreciate you guys. I mean, Danette's a rock star, so it's a regular occurrence that we're having a conversation and it comes up like, talking to Danette, I had this idea or she proposed this idea, and so we appreciate you guys so much. So Danette is fabulous.
Well, you've got an amazing team, and your leaders are leading at such a high level. So one of the things though that y'all have encountered, and maybe this is be kind of the one of the biggest questions of the episode, will be you just went through a recent remodel, and I know you and I talked kind of leading up to that remodel about, okay, there are actually a lot of decisions to make about what do we do with people, labor, and so there's a couple of maybe audiences who might hear this today. Obviously, Chick-fil-A operators might be listening. There might be some people listening though from the outside that don't understand Chick-fil-A or even a remodel with Chick-fil-A and how all that works. Um, so we'll try to speak to both audiences here, but as you go in to a remodel, and kind of set the stage. So it's Chick-fil-A's building. They're coming in saying we like to remodel. They figure out a timeline for when they're going to close your location. And y'all were closed for how long last year?
Uh, uh about almost 4 months. So
4 months. Okay. So, and that wasn't the original plan. It was supposed to be a little bit shorter, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
yeah, we were supposed to be right around 12 weeks,
Okay.
was what they figured from closing to reopening. So, and it's just
So,
part of it. Construction
yeah,
runs into problems. So
right. And even that right there creates another level of complexity for you've got, you know, a number of people. So kind of talk about what were some of your questions or decisions that you had to make going into the remodel, and then we can kind of talk about after the aftermath and how you know, some of the results of that. But what were some of the challenges going into remodel?
yeah, I mean, so you've got your staff and you're trying to figure out how to um, a keep them, because when you go, if it had stayed at 12 weeks, like that's a long time to not be working and need something to do. And so what do we do with them? Do we let them all just go to unemployment, and do we find places at other restaurants? And and so we kind of decided would ask other restaurants, hey, will you take some of our people? And so we kind of let our people choose, hey, if you'd like to keep working, we've got these stores you could go to. And so that's what we did with some. And it's like But then you have some that are, there's a lot, there's a lot of uncertainty on our part, but there's a lot of uncertainty for team members going, hey, I need to work and what's going to happen. And so you're trying to hold on to them. So, we offered them incentives to stay up until close. And then we offered them incentives to come back and work, when we reopened. And so, but how to make all those happen. And then, as it goes, you're trying to figure out, hey, how many people do we need to rehire? How many, we had a good amount come back. And you have some tell you they're coming back, and somewhere along the way they found another job, and so they don't. So, but also as we're looking at it, I think, we're trying to go, how do we have this closure, and how do we come back better? And how do we make the best use of our time? And so, I mean, I think that's one thing I feel like we did well is uh, our leaders took a lot of time, during the downtime, if you will, to, we just met and we talked over, hey, what would we do differently if we had a chance to start all over? Because in essence, that's what we were doing. We were starting from, not really ground zero. We had some team members and we had some things. We had a lot of training. But what could we do differently? And there's a lot of things we do at the restaurant, where you go, it, there is no downtime, if you will. So sometimes it's hard to do uh, major planning, you know, in a hour or two meeting. I mean, a week, and so we do some things where once a year we try to get away for some time and do some major planning. But this gave us an opportunity to go, hey, we've talked about things we want to redo. Let's do it. We've got more than enough time to do this. So
And so some of that, and as I think about that and think about your team, and you can flesh this out, but of course, you're taking time with your top leaders, which would be a few people, just a handful of people. And so that's a certain kind of time to strategically look forward, and you get to do your leadership superpower thinking, and then you, and then I would imagine so that's kind of second layer or first, I don't know, whatever you want to call first layer. And then there's a second layer of leaders in there that you maybe had a different set of strategic thinking or time or investment. So what would you say, how would you characterize each layer in the investment that you made there?
yeah, I mean, we've got some top level and then kind of some, mid level leaders, and so we kind of involved most on the thinking, the planning. We did a couple of trips with different groups of them going to different stores. We went to uh, places that are fairly close by, and tried to see other restaurants that were like ours, ask questions, get ideas, just visualize how to set things up. Because while it's all the same, it's the same machines cooking the chicken and the waffle fries in essence. Everything's in a totally different spot, and so we did a lot of that. And I think we also did a lot of time just as we worked on things that we were wanting to change in the restaurant. I think in both groups, we worked on development. We brought Danette in for a couple of days, and she did some great work with us, just helping us think through processes and whatnot. But then we also just put time into leadership development of like, hey, here's some books we're going to read this summer, and then kind of having our weekly book club of, hey, let's talk about this week's book. And so I don't know if that exactly answers that question, but yeah, just trying to get the most out of our time.
So Matthew, we of course we talked about, I enjoyed getting to see you during the remodel. That was a nice part of remodel where you got to kind of take a trip, family trip, and take some time and um, invest. Even take that time to invest in your family. But then not too long after I saw you, y'all were getting ready to reopen, and and that's a whole nother set of challenges. So let if we can unpack reentry, reopening a restaurant. What are some of the things that have changed from the time you closed to the time you've opened?
Yeah, I mean, things that change, obviously, like the store looked completely different. They gutted it, moved walls, moved counter, pushed the back wall back, made the kitchen bigger, the drive-through bigger. So everything's in a different place. And then we came back with, a good portion of the team, but not everybody that came back. And so, but then we tried to hire probably about as many people as we had coming back. So we had about 45, 50 people coming back. We were trying to hire at least that many, really trying to hire more than that. So coming back, when you're almost one-to-one new person first experience, you can't, it's hard to go, hey, go do this thing when, they don't know how to do something as simple as, make lemonade. It's a simple recipe, but everything takes a little time. So, yeah, so coming back with a lot of new, we had new equipment, new things in new places, and new, everything being new, including people.
So a lot of training had to happen. Did you have some lead time before opening day? Did you have a few days to get ready? What did that look like?
So a couple weeks before, we tried to get, everybody together and make, we had an orientation. And even our ones coming back, we did the same thing because this was our opportunity to go back through orientation again with them and just talk about those things that may have been forgotten. If you've worked here for 5 years, you have a lot of knowledge, but sometimes just a refresher on the basics and on the things that we do every day. So we thought it was a good time for that. And then it gave us a good time to have a little bit deeper dives into a lot of the things we talk about, hospitality and food safety and, so that, hey, we're going to go, usually we go deep in these things kind of with hands-on training at the moment, but it gave us some times to talk about it beforehand before you step into the restaurant. So, other things we did, things I would have done a little bit differently, um, we were kind of shooting for a date, and up until the week before, they're like, "Hey, we're going to open on this date." I mean, it already moved a couple of times, but um, we were anxious to get into the restaurant and get things regoing. Um, I think I would have just waited and been, to because it's just, some of it's just construction. They often give you the answer you want to hear rather than the realistic answer. And so I feel like we should have given it a couple more days, probably open the next week, because we ended up doing some, but we came back into the restaurant and we had 2 or 3 different meal periods where we just opened, 11 to 2, 5 to 7 at night. And we just kind of did an invitation. One time it was for team members' families to let them come in and eat and try everything. And so what that did for us is gave us opportunity to practice. So we're feeding all of them free, and then we did the same thing. We took a lot of our customers that use our app and come regularly, and so we're able to track them through the app, and so invite them in and go, hey, choose a time, of these time periods. So I wish we had done a little bit more of that, and so we allowed them to come in and really the same thing, just give us time to practice, go through the motions, and so when there's no and the nice thing was when you're inviting people and you're controlling the traffic, it's not like you said, hey, we opened today and everybody's been waiting, for 4 months. And so they're in your drive through lined up around the building. But so if I had to do over, I would have done more of that. We would have had a few more days of just, you know, training. And I felt like the small windows helped us control it because it never got overwhelming. So, and then once it stopped, you get the time to stop, break it down, and go, hey, when this happened, this should have happened, or even in those moments, it's like we can train how to make lemonade and sweet tea and various, prep items while we're not waiting on it at the counter. So it just made it a little bit easier. So I would have pushed back opening a few more days, give us more time to train and learn, and we would have been ready. I mean, I think we did well, but it just, one of those things that in hindsight could have been smoother.
So it sounds like, Matthew, after that, you had, like you said, you were almost one to one in people who've been around, you have new people. And so one of the things we've noticed working with various organizations is when they go through something like that, it's a great opportunity for a cultural reset. What are some things that you do to build culture within your team, within your organization? How do you talk about culture? How do you build culture?
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. We did take that time, over the summer, to talk about culture. Hey, what are the things that are in our restaurant we want to see more of? What are the things maybe we won't, but we're just not quite there because this is the opportunity to come back. And so I think culture is a mixture of the things we talk about and the things we do. And so I think it starts with talking, but then it obviously has to be doing. If we're not doing the things we're talking about, it doesn't go very far. And so I think some of the things that we talked about, um, I don't know that nothing is it's not necessarily that it's specific to us, but it's just I think it's things you find in a lot of Chick-fil-A restaurants. And so we developed the ideas of what we wanted to do, the way we wanted to train people. And we kind of did that. We talked about, and we tried to put things together that, like, and some of it we'd been doing for a little while. We just made it sound a little better. So just in looking for team members, we talked about the ideal team member, and part of that comes from Patrick Lencioni's ideal team player. And so he's looking for people who are humble, hungry, and
Smart.
what's the third? Smart. Yeah. So we changed it to heart because I mean he missed an opportunity there. He's obviously not a Baptist preacher because 3 points for the same letter. I mean,
Would
come
have
on,
had the
man.
same letter. Yeah.
It was a softball. So yeah. So we changed it to hungry, humble heart, and it means the same thing. He's talking about being people smart and being able to. And so we started looking at that, and then we started going, well, what does hungry mean? And like, hey, that's someone who's willing to learn. And I mean, part of this is broken down in his book, but we talked about things that were specific to our restaurant. How does that apply? Um, Obviously, humble's a fairly easy one. So we're looking for home, and then what does it mean to have heart? This heart to serve, and this ability to communicate and relate to others. And so we kind of, I don't know if packaged is the right word, but we polished them a little bit more. And so I think that, and then we were just talking about, hey, what are the core values and things that we do? And so and some of them are just Chick-fil-A's, and some of them, we did the same thing. We just kind of nuanced them a little bit. So, but here to serve, and that we're better together. And it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what a restaurant is. It's here to serve the needs of the guest. And so, and obviously when we're all working towards the same goal, it's, you have different jobs in the store. You've got people who are breading the chicken, making the salads, assembling the sandwiches, bagging, taking the orders. And so, but we're all better together. It's not, the front versus the back or the daytime versus the nighttime. It's like one cohesive team all working in different parts. And so, how are we setting up that next, shift for success, or did we set them up for success? So, is the day crew setting the night shift up for success? Is the night setting the day up for success? And so, um, and then we just talk about being purpose driven, that like it's not just a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Like we have this opportunity to make a difference. And that's what we want to do, is be difference makers. And so, and then just talking about pursuing what's next. And so sometimes pursuing what's next is, how we're going to grow the team, how we're going to get more team members. And, right now it's like, hey, how do we make our drive through faster? And so we're working through things like that. But I think as we look at all those things, and then it's like, okay, well, how do we take this and now tell everybody about it? So we've done little things that we start with. We have an orientation, and then their first 4 weeks after that, we have a meeting. And this kind of came out of what we did in the summer of breaking things down, of like in their first 4 weeks, there's a meeting one week, it's hospitality. And so it's 30 to 45 minutes with people from our hospitality team. And then there's one that's drive through. And so we talk all about the drive through and how it works and what we're looking at and what's going on. And there's one about food safety, and we're talking about food safety. And so I think all those things are like you have to hear it, but then you have to see it. And sometimes people need both. We're all different kinds of learners. And so it gives them that opportunity. And it's easier to do it in that moment, sitting down at a table together, a handful of you, than it is sometimes standing on the boards, making a sandwich and talking it over. Like we do both. But just, I think being more intentional with our time is something we've done better at. So,
That's good. And so one of the things I heard in that, though, your humble, hungry heart. Of course, that you and I know that fits with some of the things we're working with other teams on. Looking for a word that fits with results. What's a word that fits with teaming, which is your heart word, and what's a word that fits with personal character, like your humble word. And then that what you've done there is create a short language for a lot of meaning. So heart, just that one word, in all this time you've invested, the break that you had, and even the ongoing training, it sounds like you're developing that word heart or developing that word humble to mean a whole lot more than you might see when you first see that word. And so you're packing meaning into each of those. And then it sounds like you're taking those three words together and you're taking it to the hospitality conversation, or the back of house conversation, or the drive-through conversation, and using it as an analysis tool for each of those areas. Is that, how would you describe that?
yeah, I mean, I think so. I think we're using it in each area, and I think we're using it when it even helps shape conversations when you're talking about something that's happening on a regular basis. And you're having these conversations with team members, and so for us, it gives us definite things to measure by, a standard to measure against, if you will, and a standard for accountability. And so yeah, so I think it helps just and I think that's just what it just helps bring more alignment within your team. So at the end of the day, that's what makes you better.
One of the phrases that you said earlier, I'm going to adopt it. I love it. Is that we're trying to match what we say and what we do. Culture is about our what we're saying, but also what we're doing, and that those are together. You can't really do one and not the other, or there be a mismatch. If there's a mismatch, then culture is kind of broken.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what sometimes that's harder to do in a workplace or a restaurant or whatever is that culture piece. And I mean not the culture piece, but just the way that it works out because there's culture in everything. It's like our families have culture. We just don't talk about it as often. I mean, I think that's the thing growing up thinking about my parents is like, the investment they had in people's lives. They would never tell you they were investing in our friends' lives, but that's what they were doing when they invited them to the table, when everybody was welcome. And, I can't tell you the amount of kids that would come to our house, walk in the door and go, "Hey, mom and dad." I mean, even though that's not their mom and dad, like never officially adopted them, they just, showed up regularly with us, you know, mom, give them a hug when they're there and it was family. And so I think that was the culture that mom and dad provided, that they created. They never sat down at a table and said, "Hey, what is our culture going to be?" um, but I think that was just the overflow of their hearts, and we saw it play out. And so I think that's what's helped shape us is just watching that. And I think that's our goal at the restaurant is to, hey, everybody's invited to the table. Like everyone can gather around. We can all grow. We can all benefit. And so I think taking that idea goes a long way. So
Matthew, this has been great. Thanks for being on the show. We want to really, I want to share this with the world and let others learn from some of your experiences, especially the remodel. That's a challenging time. There's a lot of questions going into it. And so this would be a great way for people to kind of refer to and think as they go into remodel, how they might handle it, how they might do it differently. As we part, let me ask one parting question. What's a word of advice you might give to someone who's, say, two steps behind you? You're on your journey. If you think back two steps, whatever steps look like for you, what would you offer someone two steps behind you as a word of advice?
I think it's just that I think a lot of it just goes back to, realizing that, hey, you deciding on what you're trying to do, what's important to you. I mean, obviously we want to increase sales and, increase profits and we have to build to those things. But I think the bigger investment becomes just, if you decide to make that investment in people, do that coaching, that time, whether it's you one on one in a group, bringing on someone like Jay and Danette to help you coach alongside. So, but I would just say that it's just you know for me it would be if I talked to my younger self, it's like, hey, keep inviting people to the table, keep bringing them in, bringing in that sometimes difference of opinion, even though we don't see eye to eye. And sometimes it's not that we don't see eye to eye; we just have different perspectives, and that can be good, to help us all grow and get better. And really working into to that mindset, like, hey, as long as we invite people to the table, we love them, we point them forward. We're going to help each other grow. Hopefully, I make them better. They're going to make me better. And so that's what I would. That's the advice I would offer is to, continue to coach and develop people and work on not just business aspects of side of it, but really that personal side and helping them grow. And I think that's what so they stay here and work with us. It's great because they're better people all the time. If they go out, hopefully they're making that difference in the world. They're becoming those difference makers, whether they're teachers, doctors, whatever. So
I love it. What a beautiful picture. I think the world needs that message. We need to invite more people to the table and create stronger, bigger relationships. So thanks for being on the show, Matthew. We'll share this with the world, and thanks for being a friend and just someone I can call on to. So, but we'll look forward to doing this again someday.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. See you next time. We would like to note that Leaders Q serves individual owner-operators and their teams and is not affiliated, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Chick-fil-A Incorporated.